What is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We finally got in the body lift, so that is what we're going to tackle today. Let's check out the lift. I'll show you everything we need to disconnect and everything we need to be worried about when we lift up the body off the frame. And I'm going to show you this really cool kit that I bought. It's not your average body lift, so let's check it out. So this right here is the Daystar body lift kit, which is kind of a little bit different of a deal here. So this is the actual mount. When it's all put together here, you can see the new frame plate there, and you can see on top of the frame plate, this is the body lift section here. This is actually molded into the mount. So instead of having your factory mounts and then putting a puck on top, this is all one unit that's all built into the mount. So I feel like that's going to be a lot better for the body lift. Not that a conventional style body lift is not that great when you only go an inch, but I feel like this is kind of a two-in-one. You get all new brand new body mounts and you get the lift, and then also so you got all the plates, all the bushings, everything in here, and then you also get the steering little steering adapter or extension for that. So a lot of the body lifts don't come with that. I think there is actually enough room in that factory spline to drop it down an inch, but I figure might as well do it right with this. So we got everything ready to go. What we got to worry about is basically everything that is connected from the body to the frame and from the body to the engine. Not a whole lot really from the body to the engine yet, but all the stuff from the body to the frame. So like all these brake lines, you can see we got the little squirrely doos here. That's going to be fine once you jack it up. That'll just kind of pull these wraps apart, so we're not really gonna have to worry about that. If you did have a radiator in here, you'd have to worry about the radiator hoses from the body to the engine, and that's another reason why I haven't built any of my intercooler piping yet, because I mounted here. Once I lift the body up an inch, everything's going to be off from here to the engine. So basically go around before you start jacking stuff up and look at everything that's connected from the body to the frame and see if there's enough slack. Like these lines here, I just built for here. I gave these some slack, so when I jack the body up, we're not going to have any issues there. The steering, you can see that rod right there running down. So we'll have to disconnect that before we start jacking this thing up, take the bolts out, and then we got that spacer for it. So that's pretty much everything we need to worry about up here. In the back, we need to figure out if the filler neck right here is going to reach. I'll have to get back here, and it's bolted to the frame, so I'm going to take that bolt out, get it loose before I start jacking this thing up. And that's really it on the back. We don't need to worry about the bumper or anything because that is mounted on the frame. So the box bolts are very easy. There's just 3 bolts on each side. We need to take off, jack the box up, put the pucks in between the box and the frame, and with a longer bolt, bolt it back on. As far as the cab goes, you got to get under here, under the carpet right there. You can see that plug. You'll pull that plug out, and the bolt for the body mount is under that. So there's a mount here. There's a mount right there, right at the back of the cab. I think we should be able to pull this off, this little trim piece, get that carpet up enough to get underneath it for that mount. And then there's just these mounts right up front right here. So 6 mounts on the cab, 6 mounts on the box. So I'm gonna start with the cab. I'm gonna go through, loosen up all the bolts on the entire cab. I'm gonna take out the bolts on one side. We'll jack up one side of the cab at a time, get the new mounts installed, get the lift installed, drop it back down, leaving these bolts loose on this side. We'll move to this side, jack it up, get the mounts and everything on there, and then we can put it all back down, bolt everything tight, and do the same thing on the bed. All right, we got her jacked up pretty good here, probably 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches. And everything, you can see these brake lines, like I said, they just kind of spread out a little bit. So you don't really even need to mess with those. All these lines here are good. I just disconnected that just in case. So front mount is done. These other 2 cab mounts, what we got to do is unbolt this plate. We got a 14 mil bolt. You can see right there. There is one on either side. So 2 bolts per mount. We'll go through, unbolt that, unbolt the rear one, and then we can get these new mounts on and set this cab back down on this side. And also, I would highly recommend sticking some jacks or something underneath that body just in case something weird happens and the block, you know, it's not a super sturdy setup there. So I would definitely use something for a fail-safe if that jack or block turns and fails. So you don't want to get your hands caught underneath that when you're unbolting the mount. Alright guys, here's the difference between the 2 body mounts. So you can see lined up there. See, there's about 1 inch, I'd say. That's what it's supposed to be. So we got to get this installed basically same way. Bolt from the top with the washer, and then underneath the cab you got this, and then the plate bolts right into the frame. So we got 2 of these bigger ones on each side, and then the front one takes a little bit smaller of a mount, but same concept with the mount right there, the lift built into that bushing. All right, we got all these mounts on as far as we can get without dropping the body. So what I actually decided to do is use all the factory bolts that I took out, because these washers they give you, at least on the cab mount, on the 2 back mounts, the washers are way too big. This washer back here is kind of a different style washer. It locks into the body, and I'll just pull it out and show you. Actually, I'm going to swap this back because it is splined into the factory bolt, and that washer, you can see, locks into the body, so you don't have to get inside of here and hold it with a wrench. Another thing is these stock bolts are the right length or even longer, so they're going to work just fine with a 1-inch body lift. When you crank this thing down, there's seriously probably 1.5 inches of thread sticking out of the bottom. So these factory bolts are going to work. I thought I was going to use these. Like I said, I'm going to put this washer back onto this, smack that on there real quick, get that seated, and I'm going to use the factory bolts. So we can drop this back down, get the bottom part of the mounts on. So we got that, and then we got the sleeve that goes inside, big washer on the bottom with the nut, or actually we'll be using factory nut since it's a different thread. We can tighten that down, and then we can move on to the other side. But we're going to leave this side bolt just hand tight till we get all the mounts on and the cab sitting on the mounts 100%. All right, there it is. We're sitting on our own weight. Looks like about 1 inch from the bed to the cab, that body line there. So I'll show you. Looks like all these mounts, see these bolts are plenty long. We got like 2.5 inches sticking out, and we gotta just put that up in there so you can see plenty of room for the nut still. So we'll get these bolted in there and then we'll tackle the other side. All right, I am still working on this one side here, and I'm kind of having some issues. So this bolt, the factory bolt here, wasn't quite long enough to reach and actually get some thread. This new bolt is a 7/16 and not metric. It's a little bit bigger than 10 mil, and this bolt does not fit through the body right there. So I need to drill that out enough to be able to fit the 7/16 bolt. The other issue I'm having, this mount is fine, 100% perfect. Bolt reach is just fine, but this rear mount here, where it goes through the body, is probably like 1 inch thick. And even with the longest bolt they gave me here, you can see there's like maybe 1/4 inch sticking out. Oops, but it's not quite long enough. So I'm gonna have to go grab a longer bolt for the rear mount. But other than that, we should be okay. Get a longer bolt for that. We can either use the factory bolt or probably I'll have to measure or line it up. We might be able to use a new bolt for this center mount here. And then this front mount, we're gonna have to drill out. All right guys, I just went and got some bolts. So I got some 6-inch. That's the only size other than they had 5-inch or 6-inch. These probably would be right about perfect with a 5.5. But what I'm gonna do is take that nice thick washer off. I'm gonna put one more washer on top of it. And I already tested it on the other side. It fits pretty good like that. It's still a little bit long, but it does crank down and tighten up pretty good. So if you're gonna do this body lift, at least on my 04, try to find some 5.5-inch long. I did find some grade 5.5-inch long bolts, but I skipped on them. I went to another store. By the time I got back, they were closed. So I think grade 5 would be just fine. I don't think you really absolutely need a grade 8, but I'll make these work. If they don't work, I'll end up going back and getting those 5.5-inch. Also, on the front here, this side had a lot bigger hole in it for some reason. You can see I didn't need to drill that out. The bolt fits just fine, just like every other mount. For some reason, that one corner is really tight. So we're pretty much ready to go. I'm gonna get this last bolt in back here. We can tighten down all the cab mounts, and then we will start on the bed. That should be very easy. We'll just loosen up the bolts, and I could probably even just lift up one side by hand, get one block stuffed under there, and then I'll be able to get the rest in. So the bed should be a lot easier than the cab. There it is. We are 100% done with the body lift. So all in all, looks good. If you guys are curious on how the rear bumper looks, it's not that terrible. You can see there is a decent gap between the tailgate and the bumper, but if you were to keep the stock bumper, I'd say it's not that big of a deal. I mean, there's a little bit of a gap, but it doesn't look too bad. But what I gained in clearance for this motor is where it's worth it. So you can see got a lot of clearance between that vacuum pump and the heater core hoses. It kind of lifted these AC lines away from that turbo a little bit too with raising up the body. So I still probably will have to do some sort of heat shield just so I don't melt this hose. But other than that, we are looking really good everywhere else. There was nothing else that really had a clearance issue. Brake lines and all that are good to go. As you can tell, I didn't even have to touch those. Just when I jacked the body up, you can see it kind of separated that lower wrap on that coil, so that should do the trick. Also, you can look down there, got a light. You can see that spacer for the steering. That made a huge difference. I don't think there's enough room in that shaft to extend it a whole inch. So I did read online people weren't having to do that, but on mine at least, it didn't look like there was enough room. So I'm glad I got that spacer. So one other thing that's kind of bugging me about this body lift is if you look right here at the lines from the bed to the cab, they're not perfectly aligned. I know I'm just getting really picky, but I noticed everything, and that's probably, I don't know, I'd say 3/16. Oh, it's probably not a 1/4 inch of a difference, but it's not that noticeable. If you stand back, I don't know, if I bring it outside you might notice it, who knows, but that really does kind of bug me. So all in all, with what I paid for this body lift, I don't know, I'm really trying to like it, but there's just those issues I'm having with the bolts that were too short, and I had a hell of a time trying to find the right ones, and the body line's not lining up perfectly. And also the instructions, I'll show you real quick, check this out. So it shows the diagram of how you're supposed to put these together. That's the front one, these two are the two rear mounts, and it shows on 2001 and newer, you'll have to invert the number 2, which is the middle mount, bushing, so that basically you just flip these two bushings. And when I flip that bushing up on number 2, number 3 had like a 1/2 inch of a gap, so I had to flip number 3 as well. And once I did that, everything seemed to work out all right, but that just doesn't make any sense. It only tells you to move position 2 because these are like a 1/2 inch different in height, these 2 bushings. When you flip one bushing on top for one mount, the other mount is got a big gap. So what I had to do is flip both on the rear, and then the front fits pretty good. And you can see it's sitting level. It's not sitting all funky, so I know it's sitting right, but it's just there's these few issues that really bug me about this lift. So all in all, not a bad body lift, but for the money, I don't know. It does come with that steering spacer, which is very nice. I think that is 100% needed. But with these issues, I don't know, I might just go with a cheaper kit next time. If I had to do it again, I may just keep the stock mounts, or I guess if you wanted to do new mounts, you could do the poly mounts and just a regular puck style lift. That way you're not having these issues with flipping the mounts around, different size bolts, all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe next time, if I had to do it again, I would do a cheaper kit. But I guess we can look at the bright side of things. I got a lot more room in the engine bay, so now we can start building intercooler piping, exhaust, intake. We can get all the radiator hoses built, all the cooling lines, all that fun stuff. So coming next video, I'll probably start with the coolant lines, get the cooling system done, and then we can start tackling everything else. Oh, and one other thing, my transmission is leaking from where it goes from the tranny to the transfer case. That gasket is leaking gear oil. I never noticed any leaks before, but now for some reason it decided to start leaking. So let me know if you guys want to see me fix that seal or rebuild the entire tranny, just because it does have some miles on it. I kind of have been thinking about going through it, redoing all the bearings in it. So let me know, drop a comment down below if you want to see me rebuild another one of these trannies. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.